You might think a plumber walks into your house and immediately starts looking for the obvious leak, the dripping faucet, the puddle under the sink. But experienced plumbers are usually looking at something else entirely. In the first 30 seconds inside your home, before they've even opened a cabinet, they've often already noticed 2 or 3 small details you've walked past 1,000 times without a second thought. A faint stain, a sound your ears tuned out months ago, the way water disappears down a drain just a little slower than it used to. None of these things look like emergencies. That's exactly why they get ignored. But to someone who's spent years watching small clues turn into bigger repairs, these details can tell a story you can't see yet. Plumbers notice these things because they see the same pattern over and over. A small warning sign shows up. Nobody mentions it. Months pass. Then one day it turns into a repair that could have been avoided. This isn't about panicking over every little sound or mark in your house. It's about knowing which small things are actually worth a closer look. So let's start with number 7, something almost every house has and almost nobody thinks twice about. Number 7 is a slow drain. Imagine you're standing at the bathroom sink brushing your teeth, and the water swirls down just a little slower than it used to. Not enough to bother you, not enough to call anyone about. So you keep living with it, maybe for years. Most homeowners assume that's just how an older sink behaves, or they blame it on hair and toothpaste and leave it at that. A plumber sees it differently. A drain that's gradually gotten slower usually means something is building up inside the pipe, layer by layer, narrowing the space water has to pass through. It could be grease, soap residue, mineral scale, or a partial blockage further down the line. On its own, a slow drain isn't dangerous, but it's often the earliest sign of a clog that will eventually stop the drain completely, usually at the worst possible moment. The simple action here is easy. Don't wait for a full clog. A drain strainer helps catch debris before it builds up, and if a drain has been sluggish for weeks, it's worth having it looked at before it closes off entirely. Once you start listening for warning signs, the next one is something most people hear every single day and completely tune out. Number 6 is a stain. Maybe it's a faint ring on the ceiling below a bathroom, a discolored patch on the wall behind the kitchen sink, or warped paint near a water heater. Homeowners tend to notice these once, think, that's odd, and then stop seeing them entirely. After a while, a stain just becomes part of the wall. A plumber walking through your house is trained to actually look at these marks instead of looking past them. A stain means water traveled somewhere it wasn't supposed to go, even if it only happened once. And even a small, old-looking stain can be a sign of a slow leak that's still happening quietly behind the surface. The shape and color can even hint at what's going on. A yellowish ring often points to water that has dried and reappeared more than once. The action here is simple. Once a year, walk through your house and actually look at ceilings, walls, and the areas below bathrooms and kitchens with fresh eyes, not the eyes that have gotten used to seeing that mark. If a stain looks new or seems to be slowly growing, it's worth having someone check what's behind it before it turns into a bigger repair. But stains are quiet. The next sign on this list is anything but. Number 5 is the noises your plumbing makes that you've stopped hearing. A knock in the pipes when you shut off the faucet, a popping or rumbling sound from the water heater, a gurgle from the toilet when the washing machine drains nearby. Most homeowners either get used to these sounds or chalk them up to normal old house noises. Sometimes that's true. But plumbers know that pipes and water heaters generally aren't supposed to make noise, and when they do, it usually means something. That knocking sound when a faucet shuts off is often what's called water hammer, which happens when moving water suddenly stops and sends a shock wave through the pipes. Over time, that repeated shock can loosen fittings or stress older pipes. The popping or rumbling from a water heater is frequently caused by sediment building up at the bottom of the tank, which can make the unit work harder and wear out sooner. A gurgling toilet when other fixtures drain can point to a venting issue somewhere in your plumbing system. None of these always mean disaster, but they're worth paying attention to instead of tuning out. If a noise is new or getting louder, that's the moment to mention it to a professional rather than waiting. And speaking of toilets, there's one very specific toilet behavior that plumbers pick up on almost immediately. Number 4 is a toilet that runs, refills, or makes noise on its own when nobody's touched it. Maybe you hear a brief hiss a few minutes after flushing, or notice the tank refilling in the middle of the night. Most people either ignore it, assume that's just what old toilets do, or jiggle the handle and move on. A plumber hears that same sound and immediately thinks about water being wasted around the clock, whether anyone is home or not. In most cases, this comes down to a worn flapper, the rubber seal at the bottom of the tank that no longer closes all the way, letting water slowly leak into the bowl. It can also be a fill valve that isn't shutting off properly. Neither of these are complicated parts, and replacing them is usually a manageable, inexpensive fix. But left alone, a running toilet can quietly add real cost to your water bill month after month, without you ever seeing an actual leak. A simple way to check is to put a few drops of food coloring in the tank and wait about 15 minutes without flushing. If color shows up in the bowl, water is leaking through. But there's a change most homeowners notice even less than a running toilet because it happens so gradually. Number 3 is water pressure that's changed so slowly you never really registered it happening. Showers that used to feel strong now feel like a light drizzle. It didn't happen overnight, so your brain just adjusted to the new normal without ever flagging it as a problem. Homeowners often blame the city water supply or assume the house has always been like this. A plumber asks a different question. Did this happen gradually over months or years, or did it change all at once? A slow decline can point to mineral buildup, narrowing the inside of your pipes, especially in homes with older galvanized plumbing or hard water. A sudden drop can point to a leak somewhere in the system, or a problem with a pressure regulator if your home has one. Both situations are worth understanding, because reduced pressure isn't just inconvenient, it can be a symptom of water going somewhere it shouldn't, or pipes gradually closing up from the inside. A simple check is to compare pressure at a few different faucets around the house. Low pressure everywhere tells you something different than low pressure in just one spot. And that leads into something a plumber almost never skips checking, no matter how quick the visit is. Number 2 is what's happening underneath your sinks and around the fittings you never actually touch. Most people open the cabinet under the kitchen or bathroom sink to grab cleaning supplies and never look past what's sitting on top. A plumber opens that same cabinet and looks straight at the pipes, the shutoff valves, and the connections. They're checking for a few specific things: a greenish or white crusty buildup on metal fittings, which usually points to a slow mineral leak, soft or discolored wood on the cabinet floor, which suggests moisture has been sitting there for a while, or a faint musty smell that lingers even after cleaning. None of these are usually emergencies in the moment, but they're often the earliest physical evidence of a leak that hasn't gotten bad enough yet to show up as an actual puddle. Corrosion at a fitting can also mean that connection is weaker than it looks and could eventually fail. The simple action here is to clear out the clutter under your sinks every so often and actually really look at the pipes and valves not just the space around them. If you notice corrosion, staining, or soft material, it's worth having a professional take a closer look before a slow leak becomes a sudden one. Which brings us to the one thing plumbers say matters more than almost anything else on this list. Number 1 is a problem that keeps coming back. This is the one experienced plumbers pay the most attention to because it tells you something the others don't. Maybe it's a drain that clogs every few months, no matter how careful you are. Maybe it's a toilet that needs a little work every year or so. Maybe it's a spot under a sink that turns damp again a few weeks after you've dried it out. Homeowners tend to treat each of these as a separate, unrelated inconvenience, something to plunge, patch, or wipe up and forget about until next time. A plumber sees a pattern instead of a coincidence. When the same issue keeps returning, it usually means the real cause was never actually fixed, only the symptom was. A recurring clog can mean there's an issue further down the line, not just debris near the surface. A toilet that keeps needing attention might have a part that keeps failing because of an underlying pressure or fitting problem. Treating the surface issue again and again without ever tracking down the root cause is often what eventually leads to a repair that's far more disruptive than it needed to be. So, here's what to do now. Write down any plumbing issue in your home that's happened more than once. If something has repeated 2 or 3 times, that's the moment to have a professional look at the actual cause, not just fix the latest symptom. None of the 7 things on this list are about creating panic over every stain, sound, or slow drain in your house. Plumbers aren't walking through your home looking for disaster. They're looking for small clues that tell a bigger story, the kind of details that are easy to live with for years because none of them feel urgent on their own. Tonight, take 2 minutes and check a few areas. Listen to how your toilet sounds when nobody's using it. Glance under your sinks and think about whether anything in your house has needed attention more than once. If you found one of these 7 things somewhere in your own home, tell me which one in the comments. I'm curious how common these really are. And if you want more of these overlooked household clues, subscribe, because there are plenty more hiding in plain sight.